The blast ripped me off the ground before I even heard it. 1 second, I stood where the Admiral ordered me to stand. The next, C4, a very deadly bomb vaporized the earth beneath my boots and slammed me into darkness. Fire punched the air out of my lungs. Shrapnel grazed my face. My ears blew out so violently the world went silent in one blink. Through the smoke, as my body twitched on the dirt he meant to bury me under, I saw him. Admiral Thorne. Hands behind his back. Walking away. Not checking. Not calling for help. Just leaving because he thought I was dead. He rigged the training accident. He detonated it under me. He expected my corpse to end his problem. But he was wrong. Before I show you how I survived the deadly blast, the unescapable death, kindly hit like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Now, back to the beginning. Before the blast tore the ground out from under me, I wasn't a threat. I was a problem. The kind that keeps men like Admiral Thorne awake at night. I didn't join the program to make noise. I didn't come here to prove a point. I came here to work, to climb, to outlast anything thrown at me. And I did. From the first day of selection, the numbers shifted. I outran my class on the beach runs. I outshot every marksman during firearms evaluation. I outwham half the male recruits who had grown up on water. I completed log carries with shoulders that refused to collapse, even when the others folded under weight and heat. Instructors didn't praise me. They didn't need to. Their silence said more than any compliment. Every time I crossed a finish line first, not just beating men, but breaking their times, I saw the shift in their faces. Not anger. Not resentment. Recognition. I was outperforming candidates bred for this program since childhood. Candidates the Admiral personally endorsed. Candidates who carried his name on their backs like a shield. And yet, I moved faster. Thought sharper. Hit harder. Endured longer. During cold water conditioning, 3 recruits tapped out in the first minute. 2 instructors turned their heads so they wouldn't watch the Admiral's godson shake uncontrollably in the surf. I stayed. Not because I didn't feel the cold, but because pain didn't own me the way it owned them. Rumors started early. Whispers traveling faster than orders. She's not supposed to be this good. She's making the Admiral's favorites look weak. She's breaking every damn record. She's better than all of them. He won't like that. I ignored the talk, kept my focus narrow, my mouth shut, my pace lethal. But excellence has a way of drawing fire. Especially in a system built on tradition, hierarchy, and egos older than the program itself. Every time I raised the bar, the Admiral's godson stumbled under it. Every time I hit a target, another man missed his. Every time I carried the heaviest load, someone whispered that I shouldn't have. The more I excelled, the more invisible lines I crossed. Lines men like Admiral Thorne believe should never be touched by someone like me. He didn't see a recruit. He saw a problem wearing a uniform he controlled. A threat wrapped in discipline. A reminder that the old order he clung to was slipping through his fingers. I never challenged his authority. I never sought attention. I didn't need to. My performance did the talking. My numbers wrote their own kind of rebellion. My existence inside his program was an offense he couldn't tolerate. And he made sure I understood that long before the C4 exploded. Long before the smoke swallowed me. Long before he walked away believing his problem was finally gone. Because the truth is simple. I didn't become a target the day he planted the bomb. I became a target the day I proved I didn't need his permission to rise. Admiral Thorne never raised his voice at me. He never threatened me. He never pulled me aside or corrected me in front of the others. Men like him don't waste their breath on the people they fear. They watch, they measure, and then they remove. At first, I didn't see it. I only saw the medals on his chest, the confidence in his walk, the authority that seemed carved into his posture. To everyone on base, he was untouchable. Decorated. Respected. A man whose reputation traveled ahead of him like a shadow you saluted before he even appeared. But admiration hides many things. And behind his medals was a man built on insecurity disguised as tradition. Every time I outperformed his chosen recruits, something in his eyes tightened. A small clench of the jaw. A brief pause before he looked away. A look that wasn't disappointment, but injury. His pride became the first casualty of my success. I noticed the shift during our endurance trials. A 6-mile weighted run under full sun. His godson, Marcus Thorne, collapsed at mile 3. Heat exhaustion. Disorientation. Panic in his breathing. I passed him at a steady pace, not out of arrogance, but out of discipline. He reached for the canteen on his belt with trembling fingers. I reached the finish line before half the class. When the Admiral walked onto the field afterward, his gaze slid past every recruit except me. Not in approval. Not in respect. In calculation. The next day, during close-quarters combat evaluations, Marcus failed again. He hesitated before every strike. Dropped his guard. Moved slow, unfocused, frustrated. I finished my match in 39 seconds. I didn't celebrate. I didn't look at him. I didn't look at the Admiral. But the room did. Every instructor. Every recruit. Every officer in the observation deck. Eyes drifted from his godson lying on the mat to me standing over mine. No one spoke. But whispers move through bases faster than orders. She's making him look bad. She's outperforming the Admiral's own blood. She's embarrassing the chain of command. She's a problem. I heard them all. Not because they were loud, but because they were true. And men like Admiral Thorne do not tolerate the truth when it bruises their pride. I began noticing him everywhere after that. Watching me. Not the way a leader observes talent, but the way a predator studies entry points. During firearm drills, he stood behind the range glass, arms folded, expression unreadable, while I landed near perfect groupings. During obstacle courses, he stopped mid-conversation with senior officers to track my movement, like he was waiting for evidence I wasn't human. During briefing sessions, he let his gaze settle on me for 1 second too long. The kind of stare that feels like a verdict, not a glance. His silence became the loudest threat on base. Every time I broke a record, he lost another piece of the control he worshipped. Every time I crossed a finish line first, he carried that defeat on his shoulders. Every time his godson failed where I excelled, his legacy cracked a little more. And that's when the whispers turned into warnings. She won't last here. He won't allow it. She's pushing too far. You don't outshine a man like him and walk away untouched. I knew then what I should have known long before the explosion. Admiral Thorne wasn't impressed by me. He wasn't inspired by me. He wasn't proud of the program for producing someone like me. He was offended. Offended by my strength. Offended by my precision. Offended by the fact that I existed inside a world he thought he controlled. And there is only one thing more dangerous than a powerful man. A powerful man who feels threatened. That's when he made his decision. Not publicly. Not with words. Not with reprimands or warnings. His choice was made in silence. Sharp, cold, and absolute. I could not remain in the program. Not while I kept rising. Not while his godson kept falling. Not while my presence reminded him every day that excellence doesn't ask for permission. And men like Admiral Thorne always eliminate what they cannot dominate. The day he realized he couldn't stop me from rising was the day he decided to bury me instead. The day he decided to erase me didn't arrive with warnings. It didn't arrive with tension in the air or strange looks from officers. It arrived like every other morning, quiet, disciplined, orderly. Reveille at 0430. Cold air. Steel gray sky. Boots lace tight. Breath sharp enough to cut wind. Nothing about that morning hinted that I was walking into a grave he had already dug for me. The order came during chow. A clipboard passed down the line with the next schedule. A simple entry, stamped with the Admiral's approval. Demolition Systems Familiarization, 1,100 hours. Standard training. Part of the program. Nothing unusual. But the red initials next to it, 80, told me the session would be supervised by Admiral Thorne himself. That alone should have been enough. Men like him don't personally oversee simple drills. They delegate. They observe from balconies, not dirt. But I had no reason yet to believe my own death had already been planned. We marched to the demolition field at exactly 1,058 hours. The wind was still. The sky was silent. The air crisp enough to sting the lungs. A row of wooden platforms stood in the center of the field, training structures built to withstand controlled blasts. Nothing on them looked suspicious. Nothing looked altered. But Admiral Thorne was already there. Hands behind his back. Uniform immaculate. Expression carved from stone. The kind of presence that demanded silence without ever raising a voice. He greeted no one. Not a nod. Not a glance. Not even acknowledgement of his own officers. His eyes landed on me and never moved. "Recruit," he said, voice calm, controlled. "You're with me today." Not an instruction. A verdict. He walked me to a single platform, isolated from the others, closer to the tree line, further from the observation tower. Not the standard layout. I stepped onto the wood. It felt solid beneath my boots. Stable. Reinforced. Nothing about it suggested that a layer of C4 slept beneath its surface. The Admiral crouched near the base of the structure, running gloved fingers along the framing beams with the familiarity of a man checking a weapon he'd loaded himself. He didn't hide it. He didn't need to. At the time, I thought he was inspecting safety protocols. Now I know he was confirming the kill zone, making sure the blast radius aligned with my height, weight, and center of gravity. He stood up slowly, brushed off the dust, and stepped toward me. His shadow cut across the platform like a blade. He pointed to the exact center of the wood and said the words that sealed my fate. "Stand exactly here. Don't move until I say." There was no emotion in his tone. No tension. No hesitation. Just precision, clinical, surgical, practiced. Orders were orders. I followed them. I planted my boots on that mark. Squared my shoulders. Looked straight ahead. He walked a slow circle around me, measuring angles, distances, fragmentation patterns. Details no trainee would notice unless they had been taught to kill. His eyes lingered on my feet. That was the moment he signed my death warrant. Not with paperwork. Not with a briefing. But with a faint, satisfied smile, a smile that didn't belong in a military field, a smile that didn't belong on the face of a commander, a smile that should have chilled my blood. Because it wasn't the smile of a teacher preparing a demonstration. It was the smile of a man certain he would never see me standing again. He took 3 steps back, lifted his hand slightly, an unspoken countdown. And in that final second, before the explosion, he engineered tore the earth out from under me. I saw it. Not guilt. Not doubt. Not conflict. Relief. The kind a man feels when he believes a problem is finally about to disappear. He didn't know I saw it. He didn't know I would survive. He didn't know that this training drill he designed as my execution would become the beginning of his downfall. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. When he triggered that blast, he expected the only thing left of me to be silence. The Admiral lifted his hand, and the world obeyed. I didn't hear the detonation. I felt it. A deep, violent concussion erupted beneath my boots, a force so sudden and absolute it didn't lift me from the platform. It erased the platform from under me. The wood didn't break. It didn't splinter. It vaporized, splitting open in a burst of fire that swallowed everything from the ankles down. The blast punched through my legs, ripped through my spine, and folded my body backward before I could breathe, scream, or understand I was still inside myself. Flames surged upward in a violent column. Debris snapped through the air like supersonic shrapnel. hot, sharp, and hungry. I felt the ground disappear. Then I felt nothing. The shockwave arrived a second later. A brutal, bone-shaking wave that hit me in the chest and threw me into the dirt with enough force to empty my lungs in one violent exhale. My ears ruptured. Hearing died. Vision disintegrated into static. Time didn't slow. It vanished. My body hit the ground hard. But my mind was already gone, floating somewhere between instinct and oblivion. Fire rolled across the earth. Smoke curled around my face. Dust settled on my teeth. Blood warmed the soil beneath me. And through the haze, through the ripping pain and the suffocating darkness swallowing the edges of my sight, movement appeared. A silhouette. Tall. Still. Unharmed. Admiral Thorne. He stood exactly where he had been before the blast. Hands behind his back, posture straight, breathing calm. Not a single flinch. Not a single step toward me. Not a single command for help. He watched the fire for 1 second. Maybe 2. Then he turned his head slightly, looking down at the crater where I lay buried under smoke and rubble. Only his profile was lit by the flames. But even from the ground, even drifting in and out of consciousness, I saw it. A small exhale. A subtle shift of his shoulders. A quiet satisfaction. The kind a man releases only when he believes the worst part is over. The blast knocked out the cameras along the tree line. The shockwave killed the comms tower for a full minute. Every system that could have caught the truth went offline. Exactly as he planned. No footage. No audio. No witnesses except the trees that couldn't speak and the dirt meant to bury me. His boots turned away from me. Slow. Unhurried. Deliberate. He didn't check for survivors. He didn't assess damage. He didn't secure the site. He didn't because he believed there were no survivors. He believed the blast radius, the pressure wave, the debris, the fire. All of it had done exactly what he engineered it to do. I wasn't a trainee anymore. Not in his eyes. I was a problem that had just been erased. He walked away from the inferno like a man leaving a meeting that ended in his favor. Calm, composed, untouched by the destruction unfolding behind him. The smoke hid my body. The flames hid my breath. The silence hid my heartbeat. And as he disappeared into the distance, his shadow swallowed by the glare of the burning field, he carried the certainty that he had finally won. But I wasn't dead. Not yet. Not then. Not on the ground he tried to bury me in. I only looked dead. And sometimes, in places where monsters hold power, looking dead is the only chance you get to stay alive. The Admiral thought the blast finished me. But men like him don't trust explosions alone. They trust insurance. Violent, silent, and deniable. I heard him before I saw him. Not clearly. Not through sound. My ears were still ringing with the aftershock of death. But through vibration. Through the way the ground shifted beneath the rubble. Through the rhythm of footsteps that didn't belong to any recruit on this base. Heavy. Measured. Confident. A man who walks like he has killed before. My body was half buried under debris, skin burning, lungs barely taking air. I didn't move. Couldn't. Wouldn't. Movement gives away life. Stillness protects it. Through the thinning smoke, I saw him materialize. A shape carved from shadows and intent. Not a Navy officer. Not a rescue team. A private military contractor. Black gear. Clean boots. Minimal insignia. Face mask pulled up just enough to hide expression, but not purpose. His knife caught the light as he stepped forward. Not a weapon chosen for defense. A weapon chosen for confirmation. He wasn't here to help. He was here to finish. He walked through the debris field like he'd studied it, like he'd been briefed on it, like the Admiral had placed a map in his hands and pointed to my exact location. He kicked aside a smoking board, knelt, and checked the edge of the blast zone with practiced ease. The kind of ease that comes from cleaning up messes men like Thorne didn't want reported. His boots crunched over charred rubble, steady, patient, methodical. No urgency. No hesitation. Killers don't rush. They collect. He paused 3 meters from me, turning his head slightly, scanning the wreckage. He didn't see me, not fully, but something about the way my arm lay, twisted but not limp, caught his attention. He took one slow step in my direction. Inside my chest, my heartbeat thundered against broken ribs. Not fear. Warning. His knife lowered. Grip reversed. Blade angled downward for efficiency. The kind of angle used to pierce through the soft gap beneath the jawline. Clean, instant, final. He was coming straight to me. He was close enough now that I could smell the metallic tang of the blade mixing with smoke. Another inch, and he'd see the faint rise of my breathing. Another second, and he'd kneel to finish what the Admiral started. He crouched. His gloved hand reached toward my shoulder. Not to help me. Not to assess my injuries, but to test for life. My fingers twitched under the rubble, instinct fighting paralysis. A movement that would have revealed me if he had been looking directly at my hand. He wasn't. Not yet. He leaned in further, knife hovering inches from my throat, convinced he was performing nothing more than a routine cleanup. He didn't realize something crucial. Something Admiral Thorne, in all his calculations, had forgotten. It takes more than a blast and a blade to kill me. And I was still alive. Barely breathing. Barely conscious. Barely holding on. But alive. And the moment he recognized that truth, the moment our eyes finally locked through the smoke, the game shifted from execution to combat. Survival wasn't luck. It was timing. The kind drilled into me until instinct replaced thought. The instant before the C4 detonated, the ground shifted. A tremor no one else would have felt. A tiny vibration beneath my boot that didn't belong to standard charges. My body reacted before my mind had the chance. I rolled. Not far. Not gracefully. Just enough. Enough to move my center of mass off the kill point. Enough to turn a direct upward blast into a glancing one. Enough to keep my spine intact. I hit the dirt milliseconds before the platform blew. The explosion tore the world open above me, but that single roll saved my life. A slab of fractured steel, part of the blast shield that should have been 6 feet to the right, landed near my ribs. Fate didn't put it there. Training did. I dragged my arm, barely conscious, and pulled that steel over my torso an instant before the fire washed across the field. It wasn't protection. It was reduction. It cut the heat, deflected the shrapnel, turned fatal wounds into flesh wounds. The blast still tore into me. It hammered my lungs. It carved through my uniform. It rattled my bones until they felt hollow. But I stayed alive. Bruised. Bleeding. Shaking so hard I couldn't feel my own hands. But alive. I kept still. Not because I wanted to. Because my muscles refused anything else. Shock held me tighter than fear ever could. Lying half buried under splintered earth, gasping through smoke, I couldn't speak. Couldn't crawl. Could barely hold onto consciousness. But I could hear. Not clearly. Not with ruptured eardrums and a skull still ringing from the concussion. But vibrations travel differently when your body is pressed to the ground. Through the shifting rubble I felt footsteps approaching. Slow, deliberate, hunting. The assassin. Cutting through smoke like he owned it. Knife ready. Breathing controlled. Boots landing heavy enough to announce purpose. I forced air into my lungs, tasting blood. My fingers dug into the dirt, claws instead of hands. My vision pulsed in and out, shapes turning to shadows, shadows turning to threats. Pain screamed through every limb, but pain wasn't my enemy. Pain reminded me I wasn't dead yet. The assassin crouched beside me. The heat of his presence broke through the haze. His shadow stretched over my broken body. He reached for me. Not to rescue. Not to assess. But to confirm. His gloved fingers were inches from my jaw. His knife hovered above my chest. And somewhere beneath the wreckage of my body, instinct finally clawed its way to the surface. The instinct that had carried me through every trial, every run, every fight, every moment the Admiral wished I had been weaker. My heartbeat steadied. My breath slowed. My mind sharpened through the pain like a blade pulled clean from a sheath. I wasn't ready to move, but I was ready to strike. Because survival isn't about strength. It's about timing. And the moment his hand touched my shoulder, my timing returned. And so did I. The moment his hand touched my shoulder, instinct snapped through me like a detonator. I didn't rise. I didn't stand. I didn't even look human. I launched. My elbow shot up under his jaw with the last strength buried in my ribs. The impact cracked against bone, snapping his head back just enough for the knife to miss my throat by an inch. He staggered. Not far, just one step. But one step was all I needed. I rolled out from under the steel slab, every muscle screaming, every bruise threatening to shut my body down. The ground beneath me burned. The air scalded my lungs. But survival doesn't need comfort. It needs movement. He recovered fast. Professionals always do. He swung the blade downward, aiming for my spine. I twisted, feeling the heat of the steel slice through the air where my body had been a heartbeat earlier. I grabbed his wrist. Not with strength. With leverage. My thumb pressed into the tendon at the base of his hand, forcing his grip open as I rolled my shoulder under and around him. His breath hitched. A small sound, surprise, not pain. He wasn't expecting a dying woman to fight like this. He slashed again, wild now, controlled fury turning into urgency. The blade grazed my arm, tearing skin, but missing arteries. Pain shot through my nerves like lightning, sharp enough to blur my vision for a moment. But pain is a distraction only if you let it be. I didn't. I stepped inside his strike range. The one place knives become useless. My knee drove into his thigh, dead center, hitting the exact point that collapses a leg instantly. His weight crumpled. His balance broke. I used it. Hands around his wrist, I twisted sharply. A clean rotation, practiced, precise. Forcing the knife free. The steel clattered against the rubble, hissing as it hit a hot patch of ground. He swung at me barehanded. Fast. Accurate. Trained. But I had spent my entire career fighting bigger, stronger, smarter opponents. And winning. His fist cut through smoke. I ducked under it, drove my shoulder into his ribs, and used my whole body weight to slam him back into a fallen support beam. His skull hit metal. A sharp, hollow sound. His eyes flickered. Not enough. I hit him again. A strike to the solar plexus, compact and efficient. His air left him in one brutal wheeze. He dropped to one knee. I didn't let him rise. My forearm locked across his throat. My hips anchored. My weight pressed downward. Not killing him. Just ending the fight. His resistance lasted 3 seconds. Then 2. Then none. He collapsed forward, unconscious, body going slack under my grip. For a long moment, all I heard was fire cracking across the field and the strained rasp of my own breathing. Every bone in my body begged to stop. Every muscle trembled with the threat of collapse. Blood ran warm down my arm. Smoke thickened the air until every inhale tasted like metal. But stopping meant dying. And I wasn't done. I grabbed the contractor by his vest collar, forcing my bruised arms to lift dead weight. Pain tore through my shoulders, but I ignored it. I dragged him. One step at a time. Boots scraping dirt. Legs burning. Vision swimming. Dragging the very man sent to finish me. Dragging the proof Admiral Thorne never expected me to carry. Dragging the mistake that would collapse his world. Through fire. Through smoke. Through the wreckage he engineered for my grave. I walked. Not upright. Not clean. Not whole. But alive. Alive enough to show him what he failed to kill. And that was all that mattered. Dragging the contractor felt like dragging my own corpse. Heavy, limp, Dead weight that pulled against every injury screaming through my nerves. But I didn't stop. Didn't pause. Didn't breathe until air forced itself into my lungs. Smoke curled around my legs as I stepped out of the blast zone, pulling him behind me one strained inch at a time. Every step carved a line through the dirt, our trail, our evidence, our truth. And then I saw him. Admiral Thorne. Not far. Not hidden. Not running. He stood at the edge of the training field, surrounded by officers who had rushed out after the shockwave hit the comms. They were speaking to him. He wasn't listening. He was staring at the smoking crater, the one he believed held my body. Then his head shifted. Just a fraction. Just enough for his eyes to find movement in the haze. Me, dragging the assassin he hired to ensure my death. For a split second, he didn't move. Not a blink. Not a breath. His mind froze before his body did. Then it hit him. Hard. His steps faltered. His shoulders stiffened. His mouth dropped open in a tiny, involuntary twitch. The kind of expression no man of his rank is ever supposed to make in public. Color drained from his face so fast it looked like someone punched the blood out of him. His lips parted. One word escaped him. Raw, cracked, disbelieving. Impossible. Not in anger. Not in fear. In shock. The kind that strips a man of every lie he built his authority on. I kept walking. One dragging step. Then another. And another. Each one drove the truth deeper into him. He watched the assassin's arm bounce uselessly over the dirt. He watched the blood on my face. He watched the burns on my uniform. He watched me breathing because I should not have been. His eyes flicked between me and the unconscious man at my feet. And I saw it. The precise moment the puzzle snapped together in his head. She survived. My plan failed. She's bringing him to me. She knows. Everyone knows. Officers turned their heads toward me. Whispers broke like cracks in glass. Someone pointed. Someone else backed away. A dozen witnesses saw me dragging the contractor he hired for murder. Every inch I closed between us stripped another layer of power off his uniform. His rank didn't matter now. His medals didn't matter. His legacy didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the truth breathing in front of him. He took a step back. A single, pathetic step. Instinctive, primal, revealing. He wasn't an admiral in that moment. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't a commander. He was a man watching the ghost he tried to kill walk out of her grave. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. Hard. Dry. Desperate. Behind him, the officers shifted uneasily. Confusion washed across their faces as they looked from him to me. To the unconscious contractor he pretended not to recognize. He knew his career was gone. He knew his authority was crumbling. He knew his own downfall was standing 10 feet away. Bloody, broken, breathing. And he knew one more thing. I was stronger than every man he ever tried to protect from me. All that superiority he weaponized. All that arrogance he carried. All the pride he built his world on. Collapsed. Right there. Right in front of me. I dragged the assassin to his boots and let the body drop. The thud was final. Loud. Undeniable. Thorne flinched. His eyes locked with mine. Not with hatred. Not with anger. But with regret. Regret for choosing me as the target. Regret for believing I would break. Regret for thinking I was someone he could bury under debris. Regret so sharp it carved across his face like a blade. In that moment, Admiral Thorne drowned in sweet regret. The kind only a man who tried and failed to kill the wrong woman can ever taste. The moment the contractor's body hit the ground, the field turned silent. Not the quiet of discipline, but the quiet of realization. Recruits froze mid-step. Instructors stopped mid-breath. Every pair of eyes locked on the same impossible scene. Me burned, bleeding, walking. And the man sent to confirm my death unconscious at my feet. Whispers started like sparks rolling through dry grass. She's alive. She survived that? Is that a hitman? What the hell did the Admiral do? That wasn't an accident, no way. I didn't speak. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. My existence was louder than anything I could have said. Someone sprinted toward the tower to radio it in. Someone else grabbed a first aid pack, but didn't dare approach until they understood what they were walking into. One instructor stepped forward, then backward, torn between duty and fear of what the truth might expose. The Admiral stood like a statue carved out of guilt. Breathing uneven, jaw locked too tight, eyes glued to the man I dragged to him. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His voice, the one that commanded battalions, failed him. But the base didn't wait for his story. The emergency klaxon blared to life. A piercing, mechanical howl that sliced through the smoke, still burning behind me. It wasn't turned on by Thorn. It was turned on by someone who thought a trainee had just survived a bombing. Within minutes, investigators from the Navy's Internal Safety Division landed on the field like vultures on fresh carrion. Clipboards. Cameras. Questions no one wanted to answer. They circled the blast site, measuring crater depth, analyzing debris patterns, documenting the way the platform had been reduced to ashes. They found scorch marks no training charge should ever leave. They found fragments of industrial-grade C4 no instructor had signed out. They found wires no one authorized. And they found me, the only surviving witness. Their questions came fast. Where were you standing? Who supervised this drill? Why was the detonation zone isolated? Why did the cameras fail exactly at the moment of the blast? The Admiral tried to step in, voice shaking under the weight of forced authority. It was a malfunction, he said. Too quick. Too rehearsed. Too calm for a man who just lost a recruit on his training field. The investigators didn't nod. They didn't write. They didn't believe him. They looked at me instead. All I did was stare back. Smoke still rising from my uniform. Blood drying across my arm. Breath ragged but controlled. My survival said everything his lies tried to smother. Recruits gathered at the perimeter, whispering like a tide. Malfunction? With C4 like that, she should have been vaporized. She wasn't even supposed to be on that platform. He told her to stand there. I saw him. He was watching. No one survives that kind of blast unless... The sentence never finished. It didn't need to. Truth rarely announces itself. It bleeds through silence. Thorn felt it. I saw it in the way he shifted his stance, the way his hands clenched behind his back, the way sweat began to form along the edges of his collar. His unraveling wasn't loud. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that exposes a man from the inside out. Investigators moved past him instead of to him. Officers stopped saluting. His godson avoided his eyes. His authority, the armor he wrapped himself in, cracked in real time. Every second I remained standing turned another piece of his world to dust. Because nothing destroys a liar faster than the proof he tried to bury. And I was still breathing. That alone was his indictment. Justice didn't arrive with shouting. It didn't arrive with handcuffs or sirens or a mob demanding answers. It arrived the way real military justice always does. Quiet, methodical, and lethal to a man's career long before it touches his body. I watched the first shift happen from the edge of the field. One NCIS investigator peeled away from the blast crater and approached Admiral Thorn. He didn't salute. He didn't address him as Sir. He simply lifted a small recorder and said, "Admiral, we need to speak. Privately." That one sentence did more damage to Thorn than the explosion ever did to me. His shoulders tensed. His jaw locked. The authority he clung to like armor cracked in his posture. He tried to maintain composure, but fear bleeds through even the best trained faces. He followed them. Not willingly. Not proudly. But because men like him know resisting an NCIS request is the first nail in their coffin. They took him to a temporary command tent. I didn't need to follow to know what happened inside. I've seen enough interrogations to read the signs. Minutes passed. Then an officer hurried in with a sealed folder. One bearing markings I recognized. Classified. Requested by NCIS. They didn't need my testimony to open it. The blast had already spoken for me. From where I stood, I could see Thorne's silhouette inside the tent. Shoulders hunched forward. Hands clasped behind his back, not in confidence, but in restraint. Each page they placed in front of him stripped another layer off the man he pretended to be. Unauthorized ordnance requisitions. Access codes used outside training parameters. Logs that didn't match the demolition schedule. Security footage missing only from the one camera aimed at my platform. Then the breaker. The contractor woke up. Barely conscious, throat raw, face bruised, but alive enough to speak. He had no loyalty to Thorne. He wasn't military. He wasn't bound by rank. He was bound by money. And money dries up fast when the mission fails. He talked. Every detail. Every instruction. Every payment. Every message. He exposed the entire operation Thorne thought he buried under smoke and ash. A second investigator stepped into the tent. A third followed. Then a fourth. Their faces, when they emerged, told the rest of the story. It was over. Not the investigation. Him. Instructors stopped glancing toward the tent out of respect. They looked because they smelled blood in the water. They saw a legend collapsing inside his own uniform. The base commander arrived 10 minutes later. He didn't shake the admiral's hand. Didn't exchange pleasantries. Didn't hide the contempt hardening his face. He simply spoke 2 words. You're relieved. Not suspended. Not reassigned. Relieved. That word carries weight civilians will never understand. It doesn't just remove authority. It removes identity. 2 master-at-arms stepped in behind him. Not aggressively. Just present. The admiral tried to speak. A defense, an excuse, a denial, I don't know. Whatever it was, it died in his throat when one of the investigators placed the contractor's written statement in his hands. He didn't finish reading it. His legs buckled first. Not dramatically. Just enough that he had to sit or fall. They let him sit. Courtesy for a man who once held real power. When they finally escorted him out of the tent, he didn't fight. Didn't argue. Didn't look at anyone. He only looked at me. And in that look was everything. Fear. Recognition. Humiliation. Regret so deep it hollowed out his eyes. His entire career. Decades of service, medals, commendations, influence. Destroyed by the one recruit he believed wasn't worth a second thought. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I didn't lift a finger to ruin him. I didn't demand justice. I didn't turn him in. I survived. That alone detonated his world harder than the C4 he planted under my feet. As they led him off the field, stripped of command, stripped of respect, stripped of the future he thought he could protect with my death. I stood there, burned and bruised, but upright. And in the hollow silence he left behind, I felt no triumph. Only truth. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is letting a man live long enough to watch his own legacy collapse in front of him. They offered to take me to medical first. I declined. They offered to debrief me. I declined. They offered to escort me to the commander's office. Record a statement. Explain what happened. Put my name on a report that would travel across chains of command. I declined all of it. Survival doesn't need an audience. Justice had already spoken without me saying a word. By the time the admiral was escorted off base, officers were already whispering, piecing together what they thought happened. The explosion. The contractor. The investigation. The sight of me dragging a man twice my size through smoke like dead weight. I walked past them without slowing. No interviews. No explanations. No dramatic proclamation of victory. Praise feels loud. Loud things die fast in the military. Quiet things last. I headed straight back to the barracks, boots scuffing faint trails of dried blood on the floor, uniform burnt through at the shoulder, arms trembling from the fight that nearly killed me. Recruits stepped aside when they saw me. Not out of fear. Out of something heavier. Recognition. Respect. A kind of reverence reserved for ghosts who return from graves they weren't meant to crawl out of. No one asked questions. No one dared. Whispers floated behind me like shadows. That's her. She lived. She dragged the hitman. She should be dead. She didn't even flinch. They didn't know half of it. They didn't need to. I walked into the locker room and stared at myself in the mirror. Burned, bruised, covered in soot. But standing. Unbroken. I washed the blood from my hands in silence. Watched the water run red, then pink, then clear. When the last trace of the fight disappeared down the drain, I felt nothing. Not pride. Not relief. Not triumph. Just a single truth rising through the quiet like a final verdict. He tried to erase me from the Navy. Instead, he erased himself. I pulled on a fresh uniform, tied my boots, and walked out before the sun fell behind the barracks. No ceremony followed me. No applause. No medals. No salute. Only whispers that would grow into stories. Stories that would grow into warnings. Warnings that would grow into legend. A legend of the trainee who survived the Admiral's blast and walked back into training as if she had never touched the edge of death. I stepped onto the training field just as the next evolution began. Instructors' eyes widened. Recruits stopped mid-motion. The world paused long enough to acknowledge what it shouldn't have been seeing. Me. Here. Alive. I didn't give them time to react. I joined the formation. Shoulders squared. Breath steady. Hands clean. Mind clear. No speech. No declaration. I didn't need them to know what happened. They already knew. And as the whistle blew and we started the next drill, one thought followed me into the course like a shadow stitched to my spine. You don't survive men like Thorn to run. You survive them to keep going. Fade out on me charging back into SEAL training. Unbroken. Unshaken. Unkillable.